Good morning, students. We have reached New Generation Cinema in 2010. In the last class, we ended with a discussion on New Generation Cinema, which started in 2010. I have given you some of the characteristics of those films. So basically, it is multiplex oriented films, and it was actually a byproduct of an exposure of these directors to world cinema through film festivals and internet. And here we see non-reliance on star actors like Mohanlal, Mammootty, etc. And it was mainly due to budget restriction. Traffic, which came out in 2011, signaled this new wave, and this new wave was known by the name New Generation Cinema. Already we had this new wave parallel cinema in 1950s, 1970s, and here we see a fresh wave of young directors coming up. Ashik Kapoor, Rajesh Pillai, Anwar Rashid, Anjali Menon, Bijo Jose Pellisheri, Amal Neerath, Rajiv Ravi, Dinesh Potan, etc. And these are the characteristics. We have discussed some of these. Mainly, we see the absence of superstars. And as I said earlier, it was mainly due to budget restriction. And along with that, we see the emergence of new young actors like Fahd Fasil, Asif Ali, Tonino Thomas, etc. And talking about the narrative structure, we see that there were a lot of experiments going on with this narrative structure. We had multi-narratives and even non-linear narration. What you see in Traffic is something like a multi-narrative. And in this first half in 2010, when all these films came, there was this controversy that we saw the influence of foreign films and themes, and some film critics criticized these filmmakers as thieves, stealing themes and ideas from foreign films, mainly Korean films. Even these films like Beautiful, Chapa Kurisha, these films were inspired. They took the term inspiration, but film critics termed it as stealing. So they got inspiration from all those foreign films. And another characteristic of these set of films where we see the rise of metrocentric urban themes, where we see the life of a metrosexual man, and city becomes the active character, and we see the lives from the margins of the city. Along with that, we have discussed all these points. We saw unconventional heroes. Along with that, we saw bold women characters. And we see a diversity in character background and portrayal of new regions, new places, new communities, new dialects are all introduced in new generation cinema. Now we come to post new generation cinema. So this trend, film critics say that this trend started with Maheshinde Pradigaram by Dilesh Potan. I hope you have watched all these films, Kamati Padam, Maheshinde Pradigaram, Kumblangi Nights, Ishq Ki Mayav, Tonde Modalandak Sakshi. These films come under the term, under the umbrella term post new generation cinema. And unlike the films happened during 2010, which is termed as New Generation Cinema. These set of films completely dispensed with the thematic borrowing from foreign films. We see that all these films are more rooted in the social cultural milieu of Kerala's different region, and we see the exploration of new regions and languages here. I would like to discuss these two films. One is Tundi Mudalandak Sakshi and the other one is Kumblangi Nights, which I believe that will go into the history of Malayalam cinema as the best films from this period. And I have told you once that I was part of this film appreciation course in Pune Film Institute. And I felt so proud when these two films, along with Jellicut, were taken for the film appreciation. It was part of that course, and I felt so proud being a Malayali discussing a movie, discussing a movie from Malayalam as one of the as these set of films become the best movies. And I got to know how these people from other regions, other states appreciated Malayalam film for depicting social reality, how it maintains that down to earth attitude, and yet discuss all those profound human emotions. So I would like to discuss these two films, Tonde Mudalam Sakshi and Kumblangi Nights. I hope everyone have watched these films. It is both these films are a very simple movies. They are very simple movies, and it could be understood by that is one of the specialities of this new generation cinema. First of all, I should say that this is one of the speciality of new generation cinema, that it took all those ingredients from a commercial film, something which is appreciated by common masses, but even though they took all those ingredients from the commercial cinema, they could mold it in a unique manner and present it in a way which is completely different from what you thought to be all those super hit films, all those films from superstars like Mohanlal and Mammootty. So they took all those ingredients from commercial cinema, but we see that there is some kind of a simplicity, some kind of uniqueness. It provided a new visual language, the use of black humor, very minute detailing, and great acting from new stars. new actors. I would use the term actors instead of stars. All these ingredients made this films unique. When you take this movie, Tondi Mudalam Driksakshi, it is it is actually a simple movie. You may think that it is basically the story is about a love between a hero and a heroine from different caste and their elopement, and there is this robbery. Basically, it is a simple theme. But when you get into this movie, you understand that Dileesh Potan's the second film, the first being Maheshan Hridayaram, this is not this doesn't provide that comfort of the familiar. Here we see a culprit, a victim, and there is this policeman, and all these people oscillating, fluctuating between kindness and reality. Here we see a police station, and police station is actually a symbol of a prison where we see all these characters, thief, the hero, heroine, policeman, all these people are actually prisoners. They are actually prisoners of this entire system. This film is actually populated with all those strugglers. These people are struggling in different ways. And here, the thief, I should say, the thief played by Fahad Fasil, is one of the beautiful thieves produced in cinema. Even his eyes speak. There is this first scene where this Fasil is introduced. You only see his eyes. He's about to steal that chain. And you see only his eyes, and that eyes speaks a lot. And here we see that the thief even steals the name of the other person. We should say that this thief steals even the identity of the other person. He takes the name Prasad. We don't know whether it is his right name. It's whether he is giving the correct name. We do not know his background. He says that he lost his identity card, and we understand him only from the references, some of his references, where we see he's taken to the house of this magistrate, and there is this boy eating, gulping a lot, and this policeman laughing at him, and he says that at this age there is we will be hungry, the boys will be hungry, and that actually is a reference that he has suffered from hunger for long. So, this is a story, something that could be reduced to a single column in a newspaper. But here, the story is fleshed out with great character studies, with peculiar situations, And also by drawing on the character of the locality in Kasargod, even when you look at the locality, it speaks a lot. In the first half, you see Alapi, and in the second half, you see Kasargod. Look at the differences in the locality. In the first half, Alapi, it is the land of backwaters. We see all green. We see the blooming of a romance there. And then cut to Kasargod, we see an entirely, completely dry place. So it is a straight cut to reality, from romance to reality. So they are facing the cruelties of real life there. They find it hard to live, and they are moving in that, and they are taking that bus uh, to a certain place where they need a loan, and they had to keep this only chain to get that loan. So even the locality adds to the story. How beautiful is that? So here we see this is actually a story of power, poverty, inequality, violence, etc. And we see that the victim and the culprit, they are actually the same face of a coin. Both are struggling for their day to day life. So, all these people, every character in this film, they are actually victims of the system. So, this is a simple movie discussing profound human emotions, universal emotions. And the other movie, Kumblangi Nights, it is also a simple movie which talks about love and relationships. So this movie is set in the backwaters of Kumblangi. We see a completely dilapidated house of three half brothers. We have Saji, Bobby, Frankie, who do not get along too well. So they have a troubled history. And at the other end, we have Shami. Look at the houses of these two groups. On the other side, we have a completely dilapidated house with no doors, no windows, while the other side, Shami, he takes the house of his wife, and look at his house. He has clearly demarcated the boundary of that house. That is why when there is this football coming into the compound, he resists that because he has actually marked the boundary. He has clearly marked the boundary of that house. So that itself sets the difference in attitude of these two sides. We see that both the houses are dysfunctional, although in different senses, because both these houses have lost their family heads and we have new ones there. In the house of Saji, he has to take over the role, and the other one, Shami, has to take over. And this is a beautiful movie which talks about how masculinity are performed and what it does to the men performing them as well as to their relationships. So there is this dialogue where Shami proclaims that I am hero. It is actually the movie is basically deconstructing that idea of masculinity. So there is this very first scene where we see this complex interaction of masculinities. We see a soft Frankie who collides with the indifference of his brothers, and on the other side, we have Shami, who becomes the symbol of what is known as, please note this term, hegemonic masculinity or toxic masculinity, because he is feared not only by his housemates but also by the neighborhood children. That is when this person is introduced by Farangi's friends. They say that Alatra Vidipella, he is no gentleman. So here we say that understand that masculinities play in contrast and in answer to each other. Talking about the toxic masculinity of Shami, we see him looking at a mirror and how he removes the bindi from that mirror and how he proclaims himself as the complete man. This scene does a few things to set the tone of the political commentary that this movie aims to make. How he scrapes it off, how he scraped this bindi off from this mirror can be a symbol of how the Malayalam industry has erased women and also their role in their society. How Malayalam cinema has actually removed anything that is feminine, which obstructs the way of obstructs the image of a complete man. Here in Shammi, we see that complete man, who the one who has a mustache, who is in control, and here we see that his toxicity doesn't come out through overt expressions of violence. We doesn't see some kind of a uh, violent expressions there, but it is brought down very subtly how he takes the role of the patriarch. That is a very engaging scene where he takes the role of a patriarch. He doesn't proclaim himself to be the man of that house. He just pulls that chair once their father sat. And there is this music when he pulls out the chair to sit. And that proclaims, that declares him as the man of the house. And from then on, he starts taking decisions for women, which was earlier a female run household. And he constantly, if you remember, he constantly has a smile, which is very discomforting. And the smile comes when he is being emotionally manipulated. So Shami belongs to that group of modern man, modern man in quotes, who believes that he can grant and he can right away take back that freedom from the women in his family. So he is the person to grant and take away the freedom from the family, from women. And he is rightly placed in contrast to the four brothers at the other end. So there is a scene where, after the accident of his friend, this Saji is sitting there in his house and he calls his brother Frankie, who is standing outside, and he tells him, "Can you take me to the hospital? I am actually unable to cry." And here we see a man crying, a hero who cries. We have seen all those heroes who have cried. For example, I remember Mohanlal crying in this movie Ravana Prabhu, where when his father got killed, he started crying at that scene. And after that crying scene, what we see is a hero who takes revenge. So he replies with revenge. But here in this movie, we see a man who is crying, who needs help, and he goes to a therapist. He breaks down, and we see him crying, hugging this therapist. And what we see there is a real human being. And it talks a lot about the taboo connected with mental illness. It actually shatters the taboo around seeking professional help, around adult men being vulnerable. We have not seen that vulnerable adult men are not seen in movies. So, this is a movie which makes us think a lot. Both these movies make us think a lot. So, there is this dialogue from Kumblangi Nights where this girl asks her boyfriend, Bobby, whether true love has gone out of fashion. Though I don't know the real answer for that, I should yes, say that the good stories are always in fashion in Malayalam cinema. So both these stories are simple and interesting story out of many characters we see in our day-to-day life. We see these moving dwelling deep into the psyche of human beings and a very authentic presentation of human lives. There is this realistic portrayal which is blended with simplicity, uniqueness, and yet, as I said earlier, yet depicting all those universal human emotions. So, as it is said, although the themes in these movies are non political, each dialogues, each scenes convey politically. It can be a critique of system, it can be a critique of patriarchy, masculinity, even caste system. And the other characteristic of these set of films, it is the people behind this movies. They are actually a collective group. We have Ashikabu, Vilesh Potan, Rajiv Ravi, etc. And they work together. For example, for Maheshan Dipradikaram, made by Dilesh Potan, Ashik Kabu was the producer. And for Salt and Pepper, which was made by Ashik Kabu, Dilip Potan worked as assistant producer, assistant director, and also he acted a role for Unnamed Rasulam, which was made by Rajiv Ravi, and he worked as the cameraman of Tundi Mudalam Sakshiyam. And we see that Sham Pushkaran has worked as creative directors of these movies. He had provided screenplays for most of these movies. And for Yobinda Pustakam, director was Amal Neerad, and he worked as the assistant producer and storyteller of Ashik Kapoor's movie Maya Nadi. So we see that With these set of films, Malayalam film industry has undergone a change. There was this hierarchy which is being subverted by these set of people and these set of films. We see an emergence of democracy, Malayalam film industry being democratic, and that actually contributes to the success of these movies.